today's video, we're going to be talking about the top 3 ways to love yourself through the lens of selfishness. Now, I know that the word selfishness triggers a lot of people because we grew up in a culture and in a world that tells us that being selfish is absolutely unacceptable. Because when we think of what selfishness looks like, we put selfishness in this category of walking over everybody, only looking out for yourself, never putting other people first. And it kind of seems very non-compassionate. And so some of the things that I want to do today is go over the top 3 ways that you can love yourself by using this model of selfishness in a more loving and compassionate way. So let's first start off by defining what selfishness is not in this particular self-loving fashion. Selfishness is not walking over other people. It's not being mean or non-compassionate. It's not pushing people out of the way to get what you want. What selfishness is in this self-loving way is it's taking care of yourself. Selfishness is really putting yourself first. And if we take that model of putting yourself first, how loving is that? Sometimes we go through life just taking care of other people. Hey, Ashley. Taking care of other people, not really putting ourselves in a space where we feel honored or feel good about it. And so one of the ways that selfishness can really work is when we start to put ourselves first. And selfishness is taking care of ourselves as well as teaching other people how to take care of us. And when we teach other people how to treat us or how to take care of us, then they get in the mindset of learning how to help take care of our own selves, and they both get the benefit out of being selfless and while you become selfish. So that is the first definition and mindset of using selfishness to practice self-love. The second thing that selfishness is a compassionate act of giving back to yourself. When we prioritize the parts of us that allow for us to be in this high status for who we are and what we have going on in our world, it makes life feel more rich and feel more abundant. So when we're not always giving, we give in balance. We don't just overgive. Overgiving is not self-loving. Giving in balance is self-loving because that requires a level of selfishness that allows you to take care of yourself and to take care of others. So these are the things of selfishness and how to do it in a self-loving way. So let's go over the top 3 ways to love yourself through being selfish. The first thing is to say no. That's a very simple statement. And I'm going from the smallest of intensities to the largest parts of intensities. And when I say intensities, I'm talking about in terms of level and commitment and motivation. Saying no can be hard for a lot of people, but it's enough common sense for people to say, yeah, that makes sense. I think I can say no. I say no sometimes. I say no when it's necessary. But there's a lot of people out there who do not say no. They don't know how to say no. It's very hard to say no. And when you're not able to say no, you really start to have these moments of resentment, and that doesn't become very loving to yourself. So the first step of taking care of yourself or loving yourself through the lens of selfishness is learning how to say no. Because when you say no to others, you actually end up saying yes to yourself. I'm going to repeat that. When you say no to others, you end up saying yes to yourself. So that thing that somebody else wants you to do, they want you to come out with them after you've worked all day, or they want you to hang out on the phone and listen to all their problems after you've been feeding other people all day through your own emotional energy. That stuff is draining. And so if you're at the end of the day and people, your friends, your family, and everybody wants to just pull on your cords, and you're like, oh my God, I just can't take it. That's how you know that a no needs to happen, or like a pause. A no is a beautiful moment of pausing. So here's how you can define what your no's look like. Sometimes we don't always know what no feels like, especially if we're used to saying yes, 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 okay, 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 all the time. And saying no feels like this little tiny thing in the background that makes us feel mean. One way you can notice no is to feel it in your body. When you start to feel a contraction in your body, when someone asks you to do something you really don't want to do it, or they're asking you to go somewhere and you really don't want to go there, and you start to feel like this tightening and this shift in your body, more than likely, that's a no. And it's okay to honor that tension and say, you know what? I'm going to stay in, or I don't have the capacity to hold space for you right now. And that is okay. If you can't use the word no, you can use those variations of the word. Um, when you notice a yes in your body starts to feel very alive. You start to feel okay. There's this satisfied, content feeling. There's no tension. Your breath doesn't stop. Some people feel very excited when they feel a yes in their body. So be conscious of what a yes and a no feels like in your body so that you can be able to put yourself first on the list when other people want so much from you. So honor yourself first by saying no. So that's the first part. The second part, and I'm going to read it from my page, is to prioritize what makes you feel good before other people. This is putting yourself first. This is saying, I am going to prioritize what makes me feel good. It doesn't matter what other people think should make me feel good. I'm going to prioritize what makes me feel good. And here's the concept and the logic behind why this is a selfish, loving act. Because when you prioritize what makes you feel good, it's easier for you to have enough energy to take care of other people on the back end. So let me say that again. When you prioritize what makes you feel good, it allows you to take care of other people on the back end. So this is not the type of selfishness where you only take care of yourself and you don't care for other people. This type of selfishness includes other people's energy in your space. So when you say to yourself, okay, today I'm going to prioritize my happiness. What does that look like for me? Okay, well, painting makes me feel happy. I'm going to do painting before I go hang out with people that I really don't want to hang out with. Does that make sense? So you prioritize what makes you feel good before you do the other thing. And maybe after you do that thing that you love, you might have enough energy and you're like, you know what? Yeah, let me go ahead and call my friend up and let's just talk. Or let me go over here and like hang out with this person. I may not fully want to be hanging out with them, but I have more energy to hang out with them. These are different ways that you can give yourself an opportunity to rise above this level of, I have to do one thing or the other. And if you're someone who's naturally coming from a people pleasing mentality, then it's really hard to turn that switch off. And it's really hard to say, I'm not going to take care of other people. I just can't stop. So here is a very loving, compassionate way to include other people in your space, but making sure that you're taking care of yourself first and foremost. And so I'm going to pause right here for just another moment. And I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions about anything so far. Maybe you came in late. Maybe you came in right in the middle of my conversation. And maybe you have some questions about what's going on. So I'll give you a couple seconds. If there's no questions, then I'll move on. Okay, so moving on. So the final and third way to truly put yourself first from this very self-loving, selfish space is to listen to another person without be curious in their times of emotional stress. I'm going to say it again. Listening without being curious of others in their times of emotional distress. I don't know about you, but I am always someone who, it doesn't matter where I go, where I show up, people will always find me and tell me the most randomest things about their lives and all of their problems. And I guess I just have like therapist healer side on my head that attracts people in that fashion. But I always run into other beings who feel the need to emotionally vomit onto me. And for a long time, I used to sit and take it, even if I didn't want to hear it. I would be kind. I wouldn't say stop talking. I wouldn't walk away. I would just sit there and allow this person to just spew. And even if it wasn't a stranger, it could be my friends. And they would call me up and consistently pull on me, asking my advice, needing some support, needing some comfort, while meanwhile, they're on the other end of that phone talking, talking, talking. I'm not getting a word edgewise in until I started asking questions. And that's beautiful. Asking questions of another person is great. It's wonderful when you have the energy to do so. Sometimes when we ask questions to other people instead of just listening, what we're doing is subtly controlling and or manipulating the situation, because what we're doing is trying to make sure that their needs are getting met emotionally, and we're also trying to make sure that we're not uncomfortable in the process. So if you've ever run into people or you're having a conversation and you sense things are going awkward. You feel them talking, they might start crying or they might start getting angry. You don't know what to say. So in order to alleviate your discomfort, you come up with something to say, ask more questions, get more detail, shift the subject, anything like that. Those things are great deflective measures when we're trying to take care of ourselves. And it's okay to be in that space. I'm not saying don't ever do this. I'm saying do this within reason. Do this within balance. There are many ways to sit with another person and just allow them to speak without needing to manipulate or control how they should express themselves, how they should feel, and how you should express yourself and how you should feel. Sometimes sitting, listening without being curious of another person is self-loving, because here's what it teaches you to do. It teaches you to be in the moment, listening to your body, listening to the other person without needing to control the situation, without needing to implement or make the situation something else. This is the ultimate act of radical acceptance. When we surrender, when we accept, what we also start doing is learning how to love without control. Loving without control is one of the hardest fucking things to do. And it's something that I'm practicing in my own space and I've been practicing for many months now. Loving without control just means letting the person speak and then just simply saying, I hear you. Even if you have all this advice you want to give to the person, even if you have all these opinions you want to give to the person, even if you want this person to see something so clearly that you just really need them to see. There's a dog barking in the background. This is what loving yourself looks like. When you love yourself enough to say, you know what? I'm going to let the person have their own experience. And I'm going to have my experience of just witnessing them and allowing them to be while I sit here and allow myself to be. That's literally what listening without being curious looks like. And sometimes it's not easy, especially when we're largely invested in how the other person is feeling, especially if we care for the person, especially if we love the person, especially if we're just like, oh my God, I want to help the person. We come from a mentality in our world that we have to save. We like to save people, is what we've been taught is the most acceptable form of love. And while that's necessary on one end, there's a fine line and a balance, especially when you don't just have it to give. Sometimes you just want to listen and let the other person just speak, and that's okay too. And then if you have a hard time listening without offering advice or opinions, then this is a great practice for you. This is why this is the last one on the list of the top three things, because it is the most intense and it requires the most commitment and the most willingness. How often are we willing to just be without trying to get understood, without trying to comfort, without trying to be comforted? And we're just trusting in this infinite space that our presence alone is the comfort, and that's all that's necessary. Our listening ears alone is all that's necessary. When you learn to love from this control space, it makes relationships a little bit easier, because now you have the opportunity to ask the person, would you like some feedback? Would you like my opinion? Would you like some advice? Because what if that person just needed to speak and you just inserted yourself in there? What if all they really wanted was for you to listen and not help them fix the situation? And some people are too polite to tell you to stop. They'll allow the situation to happen, allow all the opinions, allow all of the stuff to happen, and they won't say anything. What they'll slowly start to do is back away from telling you stuff, and then you won't ever know why. You'll be like, well, I don't know why you don't tell me things anymore. And maybe it's because they don't want your reaction and they don't know how to say that. So practice listening without being curious of the other person in a state of emotional distress. Even if it's not in a state of emotional distress, practice just listening. If somebody's just telling you how their day was and it was great and everything, let your face, let your body language be the voice. And you can tell people that you're practicing this. You can tell them that you're going to be doing this so that they get an understanding of where you are, so that they won't feel like you're ignoring them or not listening or not responding. Because I know personally for me, sometimes when another person doesn't answer, I feel like, okay, are you listening to me? And and that's not necessarily true. The other person will typically say, yeah, I'm listening. I'm like, well, you don't have anything to say. When we're so trained to receive feedback, we crave it. And when we don't get it, it starts to hit up a wound and it makes us triggered. And in my particular case, it makes me feel misunderstood or that my words are unacceptable. And if I recognize that, then I recognize that that's my issue and it has nothing to do with the other person. So if you find yourself being triggered because someone is not providing you with the feedback that you desire, you have to take a look at your own story. What are you telling yourself? What's triggering you? What's inside of you makes you feel uncomfortable in the moment? And that's vice versa for the other person too. The other person is responsible for why they're triggered. So this is how you learn to love yourself through the eyes of selfishness. And I'll go through the steps again. The first step is to learn how to say no, because by saying no to yourself or to other people, you're saying yes to yourself. By saying no to other people, you say yes to yourself. And the second step is prioritizing what makes you feel good before making other people feel good. Prioritizing what makes you feel good before making other people feel good. And this can be a tricky one too, especially if you have kids. When kids need all of your love, all of your attention, all of your support, you get to teach your kids what boundaries are in place to make sure that you're taken care of before you take care of them. That's easier said than done and possible to do. And then the third and final way to love yourself through the lens of selfishness is to learn how to listen without being curious of another person. And curiosity looks like asking questions, inserting opinions, providing advice, providing a solution, trying to make them feel good when they're sad or angry, trying to calm them down. That's what being curious looks like.